Chapter 6. Kametsa! The Fahrenbachs worked in Avadi on the Perichi River. The Neuendorfs operated at the Union Mission Station just off the Ucali River. Between the two rivers lay a range of mountains known as the Gran Pajolno, considered one of the wildest areas in the upper Amazon jungle. Mission President Charles K. sent letters encouraging missionaries to enter the new areas and build airstrips wherever possible. Siegfried Neuendorf prayed about the possibility of taking the gospel into the dangerous Gran Pajolno. His left wife, Evelyn, in charge of the mission station, planned to return in 3 or 4 days. With 2 Kampa Indians, he began to climb a range of mountains to reach the Gran Pajolno. At the end of the 4th day, they reached a village clearing. The place seemed abandoned. When the Kampa guy whistled, Indians armed with bows and arrows leaped out of the trees like monkeys. Instantly, men and women, with faces painted a brilliant red, surrounded Siegfried and his Kampa companions. Fear rules this vast area. Fear of revenge. Fear of the spirits. Fear of the witch doctor. Fear of strangers. Fearful Indians climbed trees when they heard the missionary coming. Now they stood and stared, awed at the sight of a 6-foot-inch gringo. Compared to them, he was a giant. Finally, they began to make their way slowly back to their huts. Chief Honko, who had killed several men, motioned for the visitors to follow him into his hut, where he lived with several wives. They served a supper of boiled yucca, a stringy white root eaten like potatoes, as well as roasted corn, pineapple, and sweet potatoes. After dark, the Kampa interpreter helped missionary Neuendorf conducted the first Christian meeting the people had ever attended. The next morning, while eating more boiled yucca for breakfast, Siegfried watched women sitting on the ground eating maggots. Not the dessert I want, he thought. After breakfast, he held another meeting. The people responded with enthusiasm, and Siegfried questioned Chief Hunka. How would you like to have a teacher to come instruct you about God and heaven? How would you like to have your boys and girls learn to read and write? Chief Hunko grunted. Kamatsa, yes, send us a teacher. Siegfried promised to return and then followed his Kampa guides out of the village back to Uni, where his wife waited and worried. Evelina had expected her husband home in 3 or 4 days. He had already been gone 5. Before arriving home, he would experience encounters with poisonous snakes while walking barefoot, lack of food and water, lose 15 pounds, and after getting lost, end up at Navadi instead of Uni. Clyde rescued him and flew him back to Uni at the 15th day. His wife and daughter could hardly believe it when he announced, I'm going back to Grandpa Jonal. I promised Chief Hunko that if they build an airstrip, we'll bring them a teacher. Rafuno Vallis and his wife Elise volunteered to serve as teachers. 2 days later, Clyde brought 3 axes and 5 machetes to use in clearing a new airstrip. Let me fly to you in Ovintia, he offered. This will save a lot of walking. You should be able to hike there with all your equipment in 1 day. Wonderful, Siegfried exclaimed, telling his family goodbye. He climbed into the Fernando style along with the teacher and his wife. In minutes they flew in what would have taken Siegfried 3 days of walking. After they landed, Siegfried and the Indian teacher Rafuno and his wife Elisa started the long trek to friend Chief Honka. Chief of the whole area, Honka led them to Savincia. After everyone in the village came together, Neuendorf explained, I brought you a teacher. Your children will learn to read the Word of God. But before anything else, we want to build an airstrip so our mission plane can land. Then he continued, I have an urgent request. We want you to stop making alcoholic beverages. Please promise you won't drink matzi anymore. Stop having fiestas where you drink and dance all night. We want you to be happy and to live for Jesus. Kamatsa, Honka grunted. We will do as you request. Over 200 huge trees needed to be cut down and the ground leveled. After 5 days, Clyde flew over to make sure Siegfried and Neuendorf had reached his destination. He saw the people working on the airstrip and picked up the microphone to call the airbase. Wish you could see the whole village out here working together. Siegfried really inspires the locals. The campus worked from sunrise to sunset. In the evenings, Siegfried held meetings to share the story of Jesus who was preparing a home in heaven for his people. When Friday came, he explained, there will be no work on the 7th day. We will rest and worship our Creator. Work stopped early as Friday afternoon so everyone could clean their houses, take baths, and be ready for Sabbath. Siegfried and Ruenoff worked together to teach the people the joy of honoring Jesus on this holy day. Clyde flew in and out of Navadi, helping the Fahrenbachs take vaccine to remote areas since smallpox and measles had wiped out whole villages. One evening he talked with Marvin. I think we can complete this vaccination project by noon tomorrow. Then I'd like to fly to Shavincia. Siegfried should have the airstrip ready and I can pick him up. In the morning, Marvin, Walma, and their son Rick flew with Clyde and completed vaccinating the people in 2 remaining villages. Finished, they flew back to Navadi. The propeller had barely stopped turning when Clyde asked, Walma, you're all dressed in your nurse's uniform. How would you like to go to Davincia? You could vaccinate the people there too. Sure, she answered without hesitation. I've been hoping for a chance to visit Davincia and the Grandpa Jonal. There's one problem though. I don't want to break up families, but I think we'd better leave Marvin here. I flew over to Davincia yesterday. We won't have any problem getting in, but a couple of stumps will remain at the end of the runway. And I don't want to take too much weight when I take off the first time on the new airstrip. Marvin chuckled. Go ahead, Clyde, take Walma. She can care for any medical needs. You should be back in 2 hours, and that won't delay my dinner too much. I'll be going there soon anyway, he added, but this might be the only chance for Walma to visit these people. They flew over deep canyons, rugged mountains, and gorgeous waterfalls few people had ever seen. It's only a short time since Siegfried walked through this wild area, Waldemar remarked. If she had only known what faced her, she would have insisted that Clyde do a 180 turn and fly straight back to Narrated. He buzzed the new airstrip while Siegfried motioned frantically for the plane to land. The damp soil made braking unnecessary. How will this soft ground affect our takeoff? Waldemar asked. But the excitement of watching a remote tribe see the mission plane land for the first time quickly erased the idea of any problem from her conscience. Indians, faces painted red, surrounded the plane. The men's hair reached their shoulders. Both men and women showed the tribal insignia, a perforated lower lip. Many had a .45 caliber shell protruding from the hull. They had picked up the shells after hunters passed through their jungle area. In the past, they had adorned themselves with a piece of bone through their lower lip. Clyde unloaded provisions for the teacher and his wife. "I'm sure glad you landed," Siegfried said. "I've been living and working with these people for 7 days. As soon as you and Waldemar finish the vaccinations, I want you to fly me to uni." Waldemar started a big fire. "What are they doing? Burning brush from the runway?" "No, they're burning the brewery," Siegfried responded. "They promised not to make Matsio anymore. Now they're burning the canoe-like vat used for making alcoholic drinks. Everyone used to sit around, chew yucca, spit it in a vat, add water, and then leave it to ferment." "Then what?" Waldemar wanted to know. "They have a fiesta and everyone get dead drunk. I'm amazed at how fast the gospel changes these people," Siegfried continued. "The teacher has been here only a few days, and it's a totally different village from when I first saw it a few weeks ago. They've even stopped eating wild pigs." The tall missionary had no problem persuading the people to let the white uniformed nurse vaccinate them. When she finally finished, Clyde said, "Let's get going. I'm glad Siegfried walked in without a lot of baggage. We don't need any extra weight." They boarded the Fernando Style and Clyde prayed for a safe trip. "Wait," he said, "we've prayed, but I'm not comfortable with the soft strip. We're at 4,600 feet elevation. Most of the short runways when I take off are less than 1,000 feet above sea level." "Does this mean I have to get out?" Siegfried asked. "I think both of you better get out. Let me do a trial takeoff." The plane minus its 2 passengers barely lifted off the 2 stumps at the end of the short runway. Returning, Clyde organized everyone to stompers, rollers, and choppers. Women and children used bare feet or small logs to pack the soft earth. Men chopped out the remaining stumps. They cut a huge log so that they could roll the plane back farther, adding more distance to the runway. After 2 hours, Peter said, "I think we've done everything we can do today. I'll take another test flight. Perhaps the next time we can go together. Or at least I'll take Waldemar and come back for Siegfried later." After the second try, Clyde said, "We'd better remove some of the fuel." The teacher brought 2 5-gallon cans and the Indians contributed large gourds that they had used for water. Attempting to lighten the plane, they siphoned out as much gasoline as possible. Clyde lifted off the dirt runway, circled, and returned, shaking his head. "You don't need to say it," Clyde Waldemar spoke. "I'm not getting in that plane. Let's find another solution." "The only solution is for you and Siegfried to walk to Ovintia." Siegfried followed that trail several times. "It'll take 7 hours," he said. "It won't be a problem for me, but Waldemar, isn't there some other way to get her out of here?" "The only way is to make the runway longer. The Indians have promised to do that, but it'll take several days." Clyde, in the pilot seat, leaned out the window. "I'll fly to Narrated and let Marvin know what happened. Then I'll see you about 10 tomorrow morning at Ovintia." Waldemar stood watching the plane wave its wings and disappear on the way to tell her husband about the predicament. "Look at me," she mused. "I'm still in my nurse's uniform. And walk all night? I didn't even bring shoes. All I have are these thongs I'm wearing." Siegfried laughed. "It's only been a few weeks since I walked out here barefoot, and I thought I would die." Waldemar tried to borrow clothing from Melissa, the teacher's wife, but everything was too small. She changed into a kashma, loaned to her by Rufino, and put her uniform in a plastic bag. Elisa provided yucca and pineapple for the trip. They prayed, and the 3, Siegfried, Waldemar, and the camper named Juan, started down the trail. "Ovintia! Ovintia! We're going to Ovintia!" The thought pierced Waldemar's mind like a dagger. That's where a commercial pilot found a body filled with arrows like pins in a pincushion. "Don't worry," Siegfried spoke with confidence. "With our camper guide, we won't have any problems. Perhaps we can spend the night in an Indian village." In less than 2 hours, the sun had dropped below the horizon. The equator lacks twilight, and when the sun sets, it gets dark almost immediately. Juan stopped abruptly as they came to a jungle clearing. They could hear the slow, steady beat of drums and wild shouts of dancing Indians. "Fiesta! Matsio!" Juan muttered. "They make me drink. I no drink more. You go on, I go back." "No, no," Siegfried pleaded. "Please stay with us. Isn't there a way for us to walk around the village?" "No," Juan insisted. He tossed a small bundle he carried into Siegfried's hands, stepped back into the jungle, and disappeared. "What shall we do now?" Siegfried asked. "I'm glad Juan is determined not to drink, but I didn't think he would leave us like this." "Let's keep going," Waldemar replied. "The Indians may be too drunk to even notice us. With the noise of their drums, they won't hear us." Without a flashlight, they walked on in the darkness, sometimes stumbling and falling. Carefully, they crept through tall pampa grass and around the campus settlement. "Angels have watched over us so far," Siegfried said as they walked on in the dark trail beyond the village. "The Lord will see us through the night." Arriving at the clearing, the dark trail disappeared in tall grass. We can't afford to get lost and miss the plane. We'd better spend the night here, he suggested. They stepped back under a clump of trees. I have 1 air mattress and 1 blanket and a mosquito net. You can use my equipment, Wallama. Siegfried, you're tall and thin. You need the air mattress. My kushma will keep me warm, so I don't need a blanket. Okay, he agreed, but you take the mosquito net. He blew up his air mattress and pulled the blanket over his long body. Wallama moved away a modest distance and curled up in a borrowed kushma. I'm sure grateful for the use of your mosquito net, Siegfried, she called. The monotonous beat of jungle drums echoed in the distance. Wallama held up the mosquito net each time a vampire bat dived near her face. Every bone in her body ached, and she longed for morning. The haunting sounds of the jungle vanished in the roaring echoes of thunder, followed by bursts of blinding lightning. Dawn brought a torrential downpour. Siegfried quickly stuffed everything he carried except food into a rubberized bag. Then he and Wallama sat back to back on the bag, holding the air mattress over their head with a blanket draped over it to form a tent that protected from the heavy rain. Half an hour later, the deluge slowed to a steady rain. We've got to get going if we're going to meet Clyde, Siegfried said. They tried to walk with the makeshift tent over them, but finally gave up, wrung out the blanket and stuffed it into Siegfried's bag along with the air mattress. After slipping in the mud and falling repeatedly, Wallama threw away her troublesome thongs. With bare feet, her toes pressing in the mud on the trail, she slipped less often. At 10 a.m., they heard the Fernando Stau fly over and land at Ovincia. I wish we were there, Wallama exclaimed. Me too, Siegfried replied. We've still got a lot of miles to go. An hour went by and the plane took off. Is Clyde going to fly away and leave us, Wallama asked. I think he's flying low looking for us. Siegfried stepped into a clearing. The plane circled low, dipped wing in recognition, and returned to Ovincia to wait. Falling again, Wallama felt sharp pains in her knee. I'm not keeping up with you, Siegfried, she called. I just got to stop and rest. I wish Clyde had a helicopter. At the plane where Clyde waited, curious children spilled out of the jungle. He took out his trumpet and taught them Christian songs. With aching bones, a sore knee, and exhausted from a sleepless night, Wallama limped toward the Ovincia runway. Spotting the Fernando Stau and Clyde Peters, Wallama exclaimed, "This is the most beautiful sight I've ever seen." Still limping, Wallama at last reached the plane. Clyde, God has used you in your mission plane to save many lives. Now it's going to save mine. She backed into the plane and sat on the floor behind the seats. Siegfried and Wallama had spent 9 hours walking and a sleepless night to reach Ovincia. Within minutes, Clyde and the back to Ovincia. Waving to people Wallama had met the day before, they touched down at San Palebio to pick up Marvin. Angry thoughts filled the husband's mind when he saw an Indian wearing a kushma sitting in the back of the plane. Why did Clyde bring some Indian and not my wife? Then he caught himself. Indians are important too, and I shouldn't feel this way. He turned to Clyde. Where's Wallama? Don't you know your own wife? Marvin looked again and laughed, then climbed in beside her. What are you doing in a man's kushma? You're covered with mud, and I've never seen your hair in such a mess. Without a comb, I couldn't do anything with my hair, and there was no place on the Rovinci runway to wash up. Clyde dropped the Fehrenbachs off at Nevada and flew on to uni with Siegfried. During her short visit at Ovincia, Wallama had called Clyde's attention to Marvich, wife of the village chief, who had a terrible ulcerated fungus infection on her leg. Before he left Nevada, Wallama said, Clyde, I think I have medication that can cure this woman's leg. She gave him the special ointment with instruction to treat Marvich at the first opportunity. On his next flight to the Grand Pajonal, Clyde took 2 nurses with him. 7 weeks had passed since wild Indians had surprised Siegfried by leaping out of the trees and surrounding him. Marvich showed complete trust in the missionary nurses. They cleaned the ugly oozing mess on her leg and applied the medication. They left a supply of ointment with the teacher to continue the treatment. When Clyde returned a few weeks later, Marvich sat on a log, pointing to her leg. Kamatsi, she said in Kampa. All infection gone. The skin on her leg was clear and smooth. Kamatsi, a Kampa word, meant wonderful, good, or even beautiful. It's Kamatsi when people learn about Jesus and change the way they live. Missionaries marveled at the transformation in Ovincia. No one drank. Their ornaments disappeared, and the gun shells came out of their lower lips. The people washed the bright red paint from their faces and stopped killing people with their bows and arrows. About a year later, Marvich became one of the first from Ovincia to give her heart to Jesus to accept baptism. Her husband, Shewingo, chief of Ovincia, had used his bow and arrows to kill at least 4 people. He wanted to be baptized too, but chose to wait and make some things right first. Continue listening.